the first thing is to know your why. Like, why do you want to do it? Just doing it for the sake of doing it doesn't typically work. You have to find a way to stir up your passion in it, because that's what the host is going to look for. They want guests on that they can see that there is some depth to why this person wants to be there in the first place. So I always tell people, start with pen and paper and kind of figure out your why for doing it. Find that passion, because when you reach out to host, that's what a lot of them are looking for. They're like, this person is for real about this. I want them to be on.
On cam ready in 3, 2, 1.
This is Unknown to Known, an on-cam ready presentation. I'm Jamie Maglietta, a television news veteran, helping you navigate the new media space, leverage your expertise online, and become more visible. Today's guest is founder of Podmatch, a platform that matches podcast hosts with guests. He also hosts the podcast Podcasting Made Simple. We're talking about Alex Sanfilippo. On this episode, what it takes to become an expert podcasters want and how to be successful as a podcast host. Plus, we'll dig into what it takes to be a podcaster with YouTube in play. Now, before we get to Alex, if you're liking the direction of this podcast, be sure to subscribe on the YouTube channel On Cam Ready and follow this show on your podcast platform of choice. If during the conversation, what we have to say resonates with you, share it with a friend. The goal is to help people who are on that journey from unknown to known, navigating the new media space without direction, or just looking to level up a little bit. This conversation is all about providing you, or whoever you share this with tips and mindset tricks. I also have the podcast Think Like a Producer. And on that one, I give straight up advice on how to level up and show up online. Now let's get to Alex. So how did you get to Podmatch? Like, what was it that drove you to create this pod matching platform?
Yeah, I didn't see it coming. Like most people probably. I'm sure that's a very common answer. Like, we don't really see it coming, right? For me, what I decided I wanted to do was get out of a 9-to-5 corporate job that I had, which I loved, but the writing was kind of on the wall that it was time to do that. And so I kind of just started exploring a bunch of different side hustles as we know them. So I did some web design stuff, did some speaking, did some coaching, and I decided within this to start a blog and also to start a podcast. And of everything, what really stuck the most to me that I just absolutely loved was the podcast. And so I found myself first and foremost becoming a creator in the space. And what I loved about that industry is I came from the aerospace industry. Now, before anyone gets excited, I wasn't an astronaut, wasn't a skydiver, wasn't a fighter pilot. So none of all the fun jobs were taken. I was working behind a computer. Again, I did love it. But when I got into podcasting, I came from that industry that was very cutthroat, very fast paced. And I came to this whole different industry, this whole different world of people that really just wanted to help. And they wanted to help, even if they were doing the same thing as you, they wanted to help equip you to do even better. And I just love that. So I became really like attached to the podcasting space itself. And so I started speaking at the conferences as my show started doing really well. And long story short, one day I was on stage. It was actually the beginning of 2020, just before the world shut down. And I asked everyone in the room, there's about 2,000 people at this conference, and I was on stage. And right before I got off, I just said, hey, if you'll give me just 1 minute of your time, I'd love just to give you a hug and just to ask you a question. And I had just a bunch of people line up, which I was really thankful for. And I just kept on asking the same question, which was, what are you struggling with in podcasting? And I heard a lot of things that day, but the one commonality I heard was, Alex, I'm having trouble finding the ideal guest for my show. Not someone who wants to be on my show, but the right guest to be on my show. And then the administration involved in it is very cumbersome. Like, I'd love to somehow streamline that. And well, Jamie, I went home that day, that week, and I was a corporate guy, so I had a wall of whiteboards in my home office. So I just whiteboarded out this whole idea, and it was all gibberish until the bottom right-hand corner of my last whiteboard. And I wrote down these words: like a dating app, but instead of connecting people for dates, connecting podcast guests and hosts for interviews. And I was like, that's the idea. Let's not reinvent the wheel. There's already an industry that does what people are asking for really well. Let's figure out how to harness that idea and bring it to podcasting. And so, simply put, Podmatch is a way to connect guests and hosts for interviews. And I got my start in it by being a passionate creator myself, and ultimately led me to wanting to solve a problem for the people I cared about. And long story short, it got me out of corporate. And I've been really grateful ever since.
And it's a family business.
Yeah, it is. Yep. Family and friend, like family friend, if you will. So yeah, my wife is one of the co-founders, and we were in each other's weddings like back in 2009 and 2010 or something like that. And so he's the coding side of it, but the three of us are co-founders, and yeah, so family business. I've actually never called it that before. So I like that you said that.
Well, it is now. It's a family business. And I see Podmatch as a sponsor on a few different like conferences and large scale events. So, how does it feel to see Podmatch, in big letters on stage? Like, do you ever have that moment of like, wow, I can't believe I'm here? Or are you like, I'm used to it now?
I don't know if I'll ever get used to it. Like, I feel like almost every day I'm like pinching myself. Like something happens or I see something somewhere. I'm like, what? Really? Like, I mean, I'll be real. I didn't come from software. Like, yeah, I came from aerospace. Like, I was working computers, sure, but like, I had no idea what would happen. Like, no clue at all. I am so grateful every day. It feels surreal to be doing this. And really, I am just honored to be here. Like, to be able to be helping passionate creators create better, create faster, right? Like, so they can get their message out to the world in a more meaningful way. It's just a gift to be here.
Mhm. Now, I wanted to have you on because I've been focusing on talking to high stakes communicators, and most of them want more of a larger footprint online so that they can be recognized as an authority figure within their niche and potentially attract press. And so I thought talking about Podmatch would be great for this audience because so many of them are trying to figure out how to navigate. They may just be host material right now, wanting to just get their foot in the door while they start crafting out their own shows. And when I'm exploring Podmatch in the community, it feels like that's a good fit for some of the people I'm helping. I just launched a visibility program where I help individuals identify like their marketing pillars, like who are you? Who's your audience? How do you identify the content that you need to show up presenting online to attract opportunity? And podcasting is one of those things I push everyone toward. So, what is your advice to thought leaders who want to start entering podcasting and maybe hearing this and thinking, well, how do I even get started? And again, I'm not selling Podmatch here, guys. I really just want you to learn. Go ahead.
Yeah. First off, you've done such a great job with On Camera Ready. Like On
Oh,
Camera
thank
Ready, you've done just phenomenal. So I love that you're continuing to help people like figure out those pillars. Like I remember seeing that, I was like, that's absolutely brilliant. And I think that podcasting is a smart wing of that or pillar within that type of framework. And I will say, like, Podmatch is not a requirement to podcast. So like we're going to talk about podcasting mostly here, right? So like,
Mhm.
yeah, for what it's worth, like Podmatch can assist on either side of the microphone, but you can do everything we'll share today without it. So I'm big on like not overselling what I do. It's more so like let's add value. So
Yeah.
like on the podcasting side of things, I guess Jamie, like there's two routes. So we want to talk about like being a host, like starting a show, or more so like being a guest. Like where do you
Let's
find?
start with being a guest because
Okay,
some people just aren't ready to start their
of
own show.
course.
So, how do they put themselves out there as experts to become wanted and desired by podcast hosts? I want to take a pause from this conversation to let you know about Riverside FM. That's the content creation platform I use to record these videos and really a lot for my YouTube channel. Riverside FM has all these AI features which help me save time and avoid burnout. I really needed to figure out how not to get burnt out. So, before restarting this podcast, I did a bit more research. Riverside was coming out with so many new editing features. I can also cut social media clips there, and it made more sense. So instead of booking in person conversations, I decided to stick with a remote platform and use Riverside. If you're interested in Riverside, I hope you'll use my link. It's in the description. Anyone who uses it helps support this channel, so I really appreciate it. I also wanted to tell you more about my visibility program. So in 2025, I began creating a digital portal where I can help you show up more confidently on camera and produce content without burnout. If you're listening to this in 2026, I will also be offering group coaching. I have one on one calls too. So check out my website oncamready.com and look up the visibility program. I'll have a link in the description. Now back to my conversation.
Yeah, the very first thing, I think this might be like a little bit like some sort of just the review for everybody here because you all probably know this, but the first thing is to know your why. Like, why do you want to do it? Just doing it for the sake of doing it doesn't typically work. Like hosts don't really resonate with that. Like I'm going on podcast because it looks like fun. It's like, okay, like there needs to be a little more depth in that, right? So like you have to find a way to stir up your passion in it because that's what the host is going to look for. They want guests on that they can see that there is some depth to why this person wants to be there in the first place. So I always tell people start with pen and paper and kind of figure out your why for doing it. Find that passion because when you reach out to hosts, that's what a lot of them are looking for. They're like, this person is for real about this. I want them to be on. And again, that might be a little bit of review for this group. So I'll kind of move on from that. But the next thing I'd say is really getting your outreach done right. And to me, outreach begins with having some sort of media one sheet, some place that you can send people that they can see more about you. Like that's not the main thing that you're going to lead with when you actually
Mhm.
send an email or a message or however you decide to reach out. But you do need to have something for someone to be able to see, right? Like you have to have, there has to be somewhere beyond just email because I get a lot of people pitching to be on my show, Jamie. And the thing is, a lot of them are like, I don't have a website yet. You can't really find me online anywhere yet. I'm like, okay, like and I don't mean to be rude, but I'm like, can you come back to me when you do have that? Because right
Mhm.
now, I don't know if that means you're just testing this out. And I don't necessarily want to be your place for testing, right? Like, I want to see that you're serious. There's going to be something in this game long term for you. And so for me, the first place, again, starting with your why, starting with that passion, and next thing is having somewhere for people to go to really explore more about you as the talent before they're going to book you on the show.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, guys. I've said this before. You want to make sure, but if you're new to the show, I want to make sure you're getting all these tips. It's like, you need to understand who you are, what your point of view is on specific topics, and it really does help if you're showcasing what that point of view is online, so you can start to become seen as that expert, so that when a producer is looking you up and they have that one sheet or they have that website, they then can look at your social media and say, okay, well, they are packaged together and they have engagement on their point of view that makes them a unique guest. So before you're a guest on a show, what do you do to prepare?
Yeah. So before I even get on a show, I like to listen. Number one, like, uh, and actually, I recently did a poll of podcast guests and hosts to find out the top contributing factors to their success as a guest, or what a host says their best guests do. So both sides of the microphone, I want to hear the perspective, and there was just one thing that everyone said is like the number one. Like there was more than one thing, but there was one thing that really stood out, and it was being prepared, being
Mhm.
ready, and that again, it was just listen to the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Like know who what the host's name is before you get on it. Have an idea of who the audience really is. Understand the cadence of their voice. Like
Mhm.
I'll I'll be real. Sometimes I listen to a show before I'm to go on it. Before I even say yes being on it, I like to try to listen at least a couple times. And there was recently a show where the host, he talked really slow,
Mhm.
very well spoken, right? Like kind of like
Mhm.
that cadence. And even if I did my best to slow it down to try to mirror that, I wouldn't really be able to speak to that.
Mhm.
And people who listen to that podcast listen because they like that. They
Mhm.
don't like my high energy, really fast, fumbling over my words a little bit. Like that's not really their style, right? And so I have to really think, okay, should I even go on that show? Because there's going to be this disconnect between me and the host, and the listeners listen because they like the host. So they can be on, I'm not gonna come on and be like, man, who's this guy talking 1,000 miles an hour? He's annoying,
Mhm.
right? And so for me, prep begins with really listening to the podcast to understand the host, but also to understand who's listening. Because I want to show up catering my message to the people who are going to be there. Like,
Mhm.
say, like unknown to known, like where I am today. Like I made sure I knew what elements we're going to be talking about in podcasting. Like I thought about like which ones really matter. I've been on some software podcasts, and guess what? They want to know all about how we built Podmatch. We're not
Mhm.
going to talk about that today. That makes no sense for this audience. But if I didn't do any research, I'm just like, oh, it's a good story. Everyone loves it. I'll just tell it here anyway. It doesn't really work. So for me, again, before I go on a
Yeah.
show, it is all about listening. It's about really thinking. It's about taking notes, spending time doing that. It will separate you as a podcast guest. I mean, night and day different compared to the
Mhm.
people who don't do any setup or anything like that.
Yeah, on my other podcast, it's called Think Like a Producer. I give tips like this where it's like a producer will judge you by the lead up emails. They will be judging you by the conversation or what happens before the camera starts recording. And if you look uncomfortable on camera and you're not on camera ready with good lighting, a great mic, and a point of view, other people who come across that podcast may not want to book you if you don't look polished. So you want to make sure to the points that he's making that you come prepared. And another thing I always recommend, Alex, is like if you know the topic of that conversation, to come with questions in your mind that you think might be asked, and also how you might want to say them so that you could say, actually, I have 3 tips for you, and it's these 3 tips, because you have to also think about the SEO, guys. In podcasting and YouTube, you need to know, how are you going to headline it? And if a guest comes and they're like, I have 3 tips that are for, guesting or hosting, boom, that could be my headline. And that's what you also want to be delivering as a guest, is coming on and showing them that you know why you're there. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think that is absolutely brilliant and so true. Like, if you can help the host as a guest come up with a title and a
Yeah.
description, that is huge. The problem is if you're the guest that has 10 stories to tell and that none of them really relate, you make it hard for even AI to come up with an idea, right?
Yes.
Like nothing can really help with that because like a random conversation with Alex, right? Like
Mhm.
no, but like today we're talking about podcasting and the value it can have for your brand, for your face, right? Getting yourself out there even more. Like it'll be pretty easy to come up with a title and description for this, and it should. And so as guests, think about that. Like, what is the
Mhm.
message that I want to be able to share? And here's the thing: like, you do contribute to the success of a podcast. Again,
Mhm.
if this was all over the place, random, and the episode had to be titled "The Conversation with Alex Sanfilippo," it's not ever going to get much traction. It'll never be one of the top episodes of the show, right? But if we really narrow something down that it can be about, there's a chance it might stand above the rest because so many people
Mhm.
are just scattered when they show up as a guest. But if you're the one
Mhm.
that's focused, you help the host so much, and that also helps the podcast. And hopefully, podcasting is the long term. Years from now, people are still finding that same episode and consuming it, saying, "This was really good. These three
Yeah.
points were solid. I'm going to reach out to this person." That's really the end goal, right?
And you actually shouldn't even go on a podcast if you don't have a plan for the marketing after. You're putting yourself on a podcast to level up your game online. So you should be sharing it and weighing in. And the best piece of advice when sharing a podcast is always thinking about behind the scenes moments, things that maybe you didn't say that you wish you said, or pulling a quote that you said in the podcast to drive home on LinkedIn and say, hey, I had this to say, you want to listen for more if this is, if this resonates with you. You really want to think about that as the guest. And that brings me to being a host. Now, Alex, you've been hosting a podcast for a very long time. I would say you're addicted to podcasting, right? I mean, you do this religiously at this point. You are always on the mic, right? So I am I basically reinvented my podcast after testing it out. I was a CNN podcaster. I had a little podcast dabble of my own. And now I'm like gung ho every day, planned out for months. What does it take to be a successful podcaster now with YouTube around?
Yeah. YouTube changed the game when they started allowing podcasts on the platform. And there's people who still just do audio, but even if you are still just audio, I think that you do miss out on some of the value of YouTube just from the search aspect of it. I
Hmm.
mean, most people these days are finding podcasts through YouTube, even if they're going and watching them or listening to them on a different platform.
Hmm.
So, but they start there because it's so much easier to find. And don't get me wrong, the search engines will all get better, but YouTube continues to level up, I think, faster than anybody else. So we do have to keep
Yeah.
that in mind. Like it is important. So long term, thinking about discoverability, we've got to think YouTube a little bit. I actually want to jump back to a previous episode of your show, Jamie, that I
Okay.
really got a lot out of. um, oh man, her name was Lat- Lat- Lat-
Latasha
Latasha.
James. So
Latasha James. There it
Latasha
is.
James, yep. Mhm.
Yes, it was. I'm better with numbers and names. It was
Yeah,
season
you're good.
2, episode 23. So I can remember that element of it. But you were talking about the YouTube strategy more or less, and one of the
Mhm,
things that she mentioned was that what you're doing to create has got to be fueled by passion, and let that drive your consistency.
mhm,
Because there are a lot of people creating, like we've all heard the stats on YouTube channels and on podcasts. There's a lot, but so few people stick with them. And I encourage everyone after this episode, go back and listen to that one. Again, season
mhm,
2, episode 23, totally worth listening to. I think it's really insightful. My point in that is, I believe that the first thing that you have to do to succeed as a podcast host is to have a commitment with yourself and often with somebody else. So it's not just in your head because we're good at letting ourselves down, right? We're worse at letting other people down. So you
mhm,
want to somehow have a commitment onto what you're going to do because, again, yes, there might be millions of podcasts, but millions of those are inactive. No one has done anything with them in years, decades, some of them even. No one has touched them because they just had this little sprint. And they're like, I don't know. I'm not really getting the traction I want. Make a commitment to yourself and to someone that you trust to stick with it. When I first got started in podcasting, I committed to 52 episodes, one a week for a full year. And then I would allow myself only then to decide if I'm going to keep on going or if I'm going to stop. I was probably 10 weeks in. And I was like, I love this. I'm not going to stop. But if
mhm.
I would have only told myself I'm only doing 2 episodes, I would have stopped at 5, 100% sure because I hated it when I first started. I'm like, this is ridiculously hard, right? Just because I just didn't know what I didn't know. It's that learning curve that's really difficult. But for me, again, I go back to this point: commit to it, commit to the process. You will grow, you will get better, it will get easier, and you will outlast literally millions of people who tried the same thing if you just have that commitment.
Yeah, and that's a good mindset tip, guys. If you go into it thinking you're not gonna make it, then don't go into it. You gotta go into it thinking, gonna do this. Like, it's happening. You know, when I was dabbling with I think it was like my second podcast was What Do You Do Exactly? It was every week, and then it was every other week because I was working. You know, it was I had a 9 to 5, job. It was hard to keep up with. So, if you have a job and you're like, I don't know if I could do this every week, go into it being like every other week. So I moved it to every other week. And then I had surgeries and I was like, okay, I can't really keep this up. So I wish I had had a plan so that when I did have all these surgeries, I could have kept the show going. You need to think about all that and go into it being prepared. Some people are now starting a podcast 3 months before they debut so that they have the first 3 to 6 months, already laid out and they don't need to worry and they can just keep working ahead. So you do need to have a plan. And a lot of other people don't realize this, but podcasting with YouTube as an element, as a big element, is a lot of work. Like, if you don't have the team or you can't do it yourself or you don't have the funds, you need to also keep that into consideration. I mean, do you have any advice for people who are trying to navigate this as a solo host?
Yeah, there are a lot of successful solo hosts that have full-time jobs. They have a 9 to
Mhm.
5 and they work this nights and weekends, which to me impresses me out. Like that was me the first let me think here. This first 8 years of my podcasting experience was actually I had a full-time job. It was nights and weekends. And I will say it is a lot. There are tools that support it though. So whether you're on a budget or you have funds, like if you have funds, it will get a lot easier, right? Hiring teams or more premium tools, you can do that. But if you're on a budget, you're trying to do this, I always tell people figure out the bare minimum of what you need to do. So we're talking today, like your RSS feed, so your audio version that gets sent to Apple, Spotify, Amazon, all the other places, and then YouTube, which kind of go together. I say record them at the same time, and you just pull the content. That to me is the bare minimum. So before you're like, okay, I have to be on TikTok, I have to be on Instagram, I have to be here, and I have to have a blog with it. I need a website, and I need to make sure I have a good email funnel system. Like you don't need all that to be a podcaster. And I'm not saying just become a podcaster, but if that is what you are deciding to do, commit to doing just that and add things as you get comfortable.
Mhm.
Because eventually you can actually do all of that. And I know some people have done a very good job doing all of those things, but they started off with one thing,
Yeah.
releasing consistent episodes for their listeners that add value to those people that are listening. And once they figured that, they're like, okay, I'm ready for I'm a lot of them, they're like, I'm ready to add LinkedIn. I don't even have a LinkedIn yet, but it's a business podcast. It'd be a good spot for me to go. They go and they add a LinkedIn. Once they feel like they got that down, they go add the next thing. I think that too many of us, we try to say, okay, I need all these things to do it. But the reality is, there's not that much. It will feel like a lot. It will be overwhelming. But once you get the hang of it, you might be like, okay, I've got capacity for more now.
Mhm. And there's so many questions going through my head. Can you stick around a little bit longer? Okay. First off, I want to say if you are in need of solo tools, I've been testing a ton out. I am now hosting my podcasts, well, two different places, but my one podcast, this one, is hosted by Substack. And the reason I did that is because when I was testing it out over the summer, it was all jacked up. And I was like, okay, this isn't working. But now what they've upgraded all their features, and now you can actually have your newsletter and your data for your RSS on the same post so that it won't be your newsletter copy going to all of your RSS feeds. I mean, all of your places on the RSS feed. And for some reason, there's balloons flying in the
I
air.
have never seen that
I
before.
have never seen that.
All
It
this
is
stuff
happening.
upgrading. I just saw balloons, like
I'm just
digital balloons
balloons.
go over the screen.
Guys, my Riverside loves what I had to say. So you can now post your content to the RSS feed on Substack as well as your newsletter, and that saves me so much time. However, now I am not posting on my website for SEO, right? So I have another step added that I wasn't planning on doing. But there are platforms like Substack where you could, if you're using that as your main platform, all good. You also have Riverside. I now host another podcast on Riverside called Think Like a Producer because they now have hosting. So I'm like, okay, let's test that out. And it'll go right to YouTube too. And I think, what was it? Diary of a CEO, they're coming out, or there's as of this recording, they're still working out the kinks, but it'll be in 2026 that you can get to their product a little bit easier. And they will also post your podcast video up to YouTube and Spotify. And that's important because having a platform that allows you to spread it across the internet without having to do multiple uploads saves time. So you got to think through all this, is my main point. There's some tips. I hope that helps. Can we go to confidence on camera?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh,
great.
yeah.
Because I wanna make sure we hit this.
Yeah.
You have such great confidence on camera, listening to your, conversations on your own podcast. Love the one with Rob Greenlee, he's a fan of this show, I'm a fan of his. So, when you're creating those conversations and you're showing up, how do you show up so confidently even when maybe at home things are rough or you're having a tough day or you're sick? Like, what do you do to get yourself to be Alex that everyone's hoping and expecting?
Yeah, you're the pro at this, so I'm just gonna kinda hopefully share some wisdom that's helpful today. For me, I will say this is learned. Like, I think that there are people that show up in the first time they're on camera, not that they're great at it, but they've already got the confidence, like, it never
Mhm,
really intimidated them. I was very intimidated by a camera. Growing up, I was a very quiet kid, like, I didn't have much to say, and I didn't discover that I was even an extrovert until probably into my early 20s is when I really started opening up and realizing like this is actually who I am. I just kind of came into my own, which is probably a
mhm,
very common story for a lot of us. But I remember for a little bit I was speaking on stages and I actually really struggled with that at first. I got more confident with it, and then the opportunity for a camera came into my life, and I was like, okay, I can talk in front of people. I can definitely talk in front of a camera. Well, guess what? A camera doesn't think your jokes are funny, doesn't think your emotions are sad, right? Like just there's nothing there. And so for me, I actually struggled a lot being in front of a camera, like a lot. I was monotone. I was like, just it made me sweat. And so what I finally did, like, and this is probably not the best practice, Jamie, but it's what worked for me for years. I just put my iPhone in my, blinds at my window every day when I got home from work, and I would record a 2-minute video of myself. Often, I wouldn't even pick the topic. I have a list of topics. My wife would sometimes just be like, "Oh, do this one." I just do it on the fly. I rewatch it a few times to see kinda where I messed up or, like, what my filler words were, all those type of things that you do, and it took me a while, but I started growing in my confidence in it, and so I started just recording some solo stuff, and that's kinda how I got my start in podcasting and doing some video stuff. It was just like I had some reps in. And
mhm.
so for me, like it started off that way. And now really the way I start my day matters. So for me, like I'm a person of faith. So like I get in the Bible, like I follow Jesus. And like so I'm doing all that. That's super important for me starting my day off right, getting like my mindset correct. Beyond that, just making sure I don't still to this day,
Mhm.
I don't overfill my calendar before I'm going to be on camera. So like 2 minutes before we got on, I was not like checking my email or dealing with something stressful with the team. Like I make sure I leave some space. And so that space is one last time to listen to your podcast in this scenario. And so it's like, okay, I got space. I'm not doing anything. So I'm not showing up being like there's 30 things in my mind. There's not. I'm just been listening. So it's a very
Mhm.
natural flow. And for me, I try to build out that peaceful rhythm when it comes to me being on camera so I can show up confidently, show up ready, not with 10 things in my mind, because I would be very scattered if it weren't for that. Uh, those are some things that have really helped me a lot.
Yeah, no, and repetitions is something that I talk about with a few of my guests. Allison Camerata, who's a former Fox and Friends anchor and CNN anchor, she talked about how she was like awful at first, yet she made it all the way to Fox and Friends. So, guys, if you're listening, sometimes you have to start awkward and all, messy and all. Just get started. You don't even have to post the videos; just record yourself, but watch it back. Have to watch it back. If you don't, you're just wasting your own time. You gotta get better. The only way to get better is if you listen and hear yourself on camera. And, if you see awkwardness, I like to say you will always see awkwardness. So you need to just embrace who you are and be okay with it. And that's okay too, right? This also just brings up because you have such a cool format for your podcast where you do allow people to kind of have like this stage where they explain their TED Talk style take on a point of view, you've observed thousands of people. What do you see that makes someone really shine on camera?
Talking about what they know about,
Mm,
which maybe sounds really obvious, but like talking about what you know about is huge. I've had some people come on my show that kind of learn the topic because they wanted to talk about it, and that's fine. But you can kind of tell when somebody is stretching or reading, right? Like off a teleprompter or something like that. Not that we shouldn't do that, but some people like they don't know it well enough. And I've
Mhm.
occasionally had I shouldn't even say occasionally, probably about half the people that come on, they are true masters of their craft, and they show up and it's not that they didn't prep for it. It's just that, like, I asked them to talk about what they know about. And they're like, sure, right now? Cool, good. I can talk for 15 minutes on that all day and make it super valuable for
Mhm.
everybody. And so I just see these people, they show up with this level of confidence, not because they're conceited or they've done it a million times, but it's because they really, really know what they're talking about. And
Mhm.
actually, I'm glad that this came up because that's kind of my secret when it comes to going on stages or even on podcasts as a guest. If it's not a topic I'm comfortable talking about, I don't do it. And sometimes people have asked me, like, "How are you so good on stage?" I'm like, "If you ask me about anything other than podcasting, I'm probably not great on stage, but I know exactly what I'm talking about. I have devoted my life to this since 2012. Like, I know this craft really well. So it'd be hard for me to show up and not have something of value to be able to share." And so I think that the people that show up the best for my show and any other show, they are passionate and they know that they know that they know everything about that topic, right?
Yeah.
They're willing to explore more and they're open minded usually, but they just have got it down. And you can kind of just hear that experience in their voice that there is a conviction that they know that that is what someone needs to hear and they deliver it well.
Mhm. And you're always thinking about who you're talking to and talking directly to them when you're
Oh,
saying
so
it,
good.
right?
Yes, so good. So important.
And, authenticity is really hard to master on camera. But to the point you're making, if you go prepared and you're being passionate about a topic, that's going to make you shine. And it's also important to say no. I know you're listening and you're thinking, well, I want to put myself out there and I want to be on podcasts and I want to be interviewed. If the podcast isn't a good fit, you shouldn't show up on it. And you need to know how to say no. Because if you show up on a podcast and it's not putting you in the best light, or they're not really setting you up to be passionate, then it's not really a good fit, and you need to know that and make those choices because the way you show up needs to be strategic. You don't just want to be everywhere. That's my little tea right there for that point. So, one of the things I always ask everyone before we wrap up our conversation is, one, is there anything you didn't get to say today that you would love to say before we wrap this conversation?
Yeah. As a listener of your podcast, I knew this was coming by trying to over prepare because I wanted to still be really authentic, as you said. And as we've been talking, I've been really thinking about this idea of doing for one person what you wish you could do for all.
Mm.
I think that so many of us, like we're on camera, right? We're ready, like we're showing up, we're going from an unknown presence to known. And along the way in that journey, there's this idea of like, I need to be reaching more and more and more and more people. And that's not bad. I'm not saying that shouldn't be part of your goal and part of the journey, but we can never forget that there's one person every day who needs us most. And I go back to that quote, do for one person what you wish you could do for all. Most people listen to this podcast, like, and if you're working with Jamie especially, like you've reached a level that's higher than most will ever reach. I mean, congratulations on that. We can never forget that one person though. At the end of the day, if we can say, you know what, I showed up, I know I served that one person who needed me. The rest is icing on the cake. I will continue to grow. I'll continue to build my reputation, but I know that I served that one person and made their life better today.
Mhm.
If we can all do that every day, I think the world will be a much better place. And we can never forget it just because online, like we're disconnected from those people, right? But just know there's someone here I'm supposed to serve today. If you can keep that person in mind, I think you can show up in a really beautiful way.
Mhm. Definitely. Completely agree. And even on that point, like when you are trying to show up for that one person, you should try to identify where that one person hangs out because you don't need to be everywhere. So if you're feeling like, okay, I really want to start a podcast, I think I'm ready. Like I'm feeling like, okay, this isn't as bad as I thought it could be. I can handle this. You also want to be deliberate in how you show up on the platforms that will help you connect with your audience. So, most podcasts are actually located through YouTube and TikTok. Those are the most, like, podcasts are most searched and found there. So, if you're you're starting out, you may want to think, okay, how can I talk to my people on YouTube? How can I talk to my people on TikTok before I even launch? And if your audience is primarily on LinkedIn, you need to be there. And I would say, listen to this podcast today and let this be the sign that you need to start showing up in those places before committing to a podcast. Feel it out, feel out your audience too, and see, what they have to say about what your point of view is. All right, the last thing I have to say is because I'm a media expert, I always want everyone to give me their 30-second what do you do? Who are you? What do you do? Because everyone needs to have their own soundbite. So in 30 seconds, how would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, my name is Alex Sanfilippo. I'm the founder of Podmatch.com, which is a service that connects podcast guests and podcast hosts for interviews. At the same time, we're really just helping both parties. So, again, the guest and the host reach more people faster so they can ultimately change the world through the content they're creating.
That's awesome. And Podmatch is pretty cool. I'm really excited we could connect.
Me
I've been
too.
watching you on LinkedIn. You have such a great personality, and I'm really glad you could be on the show. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. You're awesome. I really appreciate you.
If you want more information on Podmatch, be sure to grab the link in the description. You can also find us both on Instagram and LinkedIn. Be sure to follow us there. Alex has a link in the description to his LinkedIn, so grab it, go find him, and look into Podmatch. If you are moved by this episode or you think it could resonate with your audience or a friend, share it. Let them know we're out there and we're here to help. I'll be interviewing television news personalities, experts in podcasting, YouTube, and social media. And we're all here to help you show up on camera ready so you can become more visible and attract more opportunities. I'll see you guys online.